In all of the videos that follow this one, I'm going to be using for demonstration purposes a sample project that I've created. This project theoretically involves the purchase of an existing house and land, the subdivision of the land into 4 titles, the renovation and sale of the existing house, the construction and sale of 2 new townhouses, and the sale of a vacant block of land. Although this project is theoretical, it does display and it does demonstrate the power and flexibility of this program in doing complex feasibility studies on a wide variety of real estate investment strategies. In this session, I'm just going to start with the very first of the sheets in the workbook, and that's the data entry sheet. As I mentioned in the previous session, all of the data entry takes place on this sheet. The first thing that I'd like to mention is that some of the cells are color-coded. They're color-coded so that it makes it easier for the user to identify the cells where the input data needs to be updated. Green cells are cells for the user to either enter or modify the data. The beige cells contain drop-down lists to limit the selection for that particular cell, and the grey cells contain formula so that the information that's contained in those cells is automatically calculated by the program. The important point is that the data entry sheet is broken down to a number of different sections, and as I scroll down here you'll notice that the property information, for example, is the first of these sections. Down the right hand side of each section is an indication of just when this section needs to be completed. It's important to remember that not all sections are needed for all investment strategies. There are some sections of the data entry sheet which are purely optional and contain information that's not necessarily related to the feasibility study. Let's look at the first section in the data entry sheet, and that's the property information section. The first items on the left hand side are the street address and the suburb or town of the particular investment property that we're doing the feasibility study on. When these are entered and the state is selected from the drop-down list, the postcode and the local government areas are computed by the program. The selection of the state is particularly important because it is used in the calculation of stamp duty and the land tax. On the right-hand side we have a number of items which need to be entered that are particularly relevant to the property that we're investigating. First of these is the value of the vacant land. This is an estimate of just the land value without any dwellings that are on it, and it's used in the calculation of the GST and in particular the margin scheme. The second item is the market valuation. As we all know, when we borrow money from the banks, they're not inclined generally to estimate the value of the property at the purchase price, so the amount we enter here is what we consider that the bank will value the property at for the purposes of lending. Next item is the statutory valuation, and this is the item which is generally shown as the unimproved capital value on the rates notice. That is used in the calculation of land tax where it's appropriate. The next item I've called confidence, and it's entered as a percentage. What this does is simply take into consideration your confidence or your degree of confidence in the figures that you've entered in the feasibility study, and allows a dollar value for contingencies over and above what you've entered for your costs. Well, if you've entered a confidence of 95%, then 5% will be added to all of the costs like renovation costs, construction and development costs as a contingency. If you enter a confidence of lower than 90%, then a warning will be issued indicating that the amount of contingencies allocated in the program will make the figures unreliable. The next item is the number of titles in the project, and this is purely and simply the number of saleable titles that you will have when the project is complete. In the next section we've got GST. Now the GST is just simply a selection of 2 different items. The first is your BAS reporting, which can be either monthly or quarterly, and the second one is the GST scheme as it applies to this particular project, and there are 5 alternatives. In order to make the correct selection in this area, you'll need to know whether you're buying from a registered seller or not a registered seller, and whether you are going to apply the margin scheme or not. The GST assistant button on the right hand side will help you make the correct selection. Further down in this section, on the left hand side, we've got the pre-purchase costs. Now these are typically the costs that you would incur before you actually commit to a purchase. and this is just simply a checklist of items. The description that you see down here can be changed to whatever you want, and you can add to them if you need to. For example, if we wanted to do a market valuation, then we can simply type an additional item in here to add market valuation to our list of costs and put a cost value in there. Any one of these titles can be changed and any one of these can be modified. All of the costs in this section must be entered exclusive of GST. On the right hand side we've got the purchase costs, and all of these should be entered exclusive of GST too. And similar to the pre-purchase costs, these items can be added to or changed if you need to. And when the purchase price is entered, the stamp duty will automatically be calculated for the state that you've selected above. This concludes all of the data entry that's required in this section.